Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Positive San Antonio. Today we have myself. My name is Aurelio. We have Sylvia.
Hi.
Wayne.
Hi, I'm Wayne.
Santiago.
Hello.
Jace.
Hello.
And we have Sugar.
Hey.
It's been a while since Sugar's been on our podcast, but since she is here permanently, we thought that we could kind of do like an interview about her so that way you guys can know about Sugar and why she is on our board of directors for Living Positive. So Sugar, I guess we can start off with what brings you here to LPSA?
Well, I guess the most important thing is that I have made and lost friends who were living with HIV and eventually succumbed to the opportunistic diseases that come along with, and create the AIDS problem. They've lost their lives, or they're living with, HIV and stuff. And it's just been, I guess, more of a learning curve for me to learn more about it and know more about it so that, we can talk about prevention as well, and health. And so, yeah, that's why I'm a substance abuse counselor, and I am interested in the correlation between substance abuse and health. And so that's kind of a thing for me. Not only that, but I'm also part of the LGBTQIA+ community, the rainbow spectrum, if you will. I identify as a queer stone femme, and I am married to an FTM. So part of my interest is to help the LGBTQ+ community in whatever way that I can, especially with prevention.
You mentioned that you're married to a FTM. Mm-hmm. Would you explain what that is for people that don't know?
Yes, my husband was biologically born a female, and then he transitioned to a male.
What's a stone femme?
A stone femme is a femme who respects the boundaries of her partner. There are stone butches who don't want to be feminized by being touched, a certain way, and because their identity is masculine, so they prefer, to be respected as such. And so stone femme understands that, respects that, and doesn't try to melt the stone. And by melting the stone means, trying to get them to let you do things to them or not respecting their boundaries. Yeah.
And so how did you figure out that you were queer identifying?
Well, because I didn't fit the mold, women, lesbian women, they don't have a problem loving on each other. But I felt different. Yeah, there were certain boundaries that I had that I didn't want to,
Cross.
Yeah, that I didn't want to cross. And so I realized throughout my, my evolution of feminist that I wasn't a lesbian, I was a femme, and I still fall under the LGBT,
spectrum.
Yeah, except for now we're talking about little subgroups,
Yeah.
So the lesbian, and then the stone femme, or the the pansexuals and all that stuff. All those things, they're all different. They're all specialized. I like to say that they're specialized, gay women, and that's me. I'm a specialty, if you will, a queer.
So, can I ask you something, Sugar? So,
Yes.
just to clarify for my sake, because I'm an older LGBT girl.
Mm-hmm.
So, I ran across some women who were not, they loved women, but they didn't want the woman pleasuring them. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted to pleasure the woman because
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the male identity you're talking
Yes.
about. So, is that part of what you're talking about?
Yes, that is a stone butch person, or a stone masculine person who doesn't want to be feminized.
Okay.
Yeah. It causes them, I don't know, stress. It causes them trauma. It causes them, they're just things that 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 they just don't want to have to.
Well,
I think it's just a natural desire. I mean, there's some things that as a gay male that
Yes.
identifies as versatile. There's certain things that I like, that I put the stop sign up to. So
Sure,
it's
absolutely.
just an individual not a barrier, an individual boundary.
Yes,
like you said.
absolutely.
But that opens up a question, because if you're a stone femme and your husband is now transitioned, how does it work? Because if he's a male and you have more of a male tendency per se, because
I don't understand.
No, she identifies as a femme. She identifies as a feminine part of the part.
okay,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to get. All right,
Yeah, and he's always been a stone, anyway.
okay.
So we're fine. We
so if that and with your partner didn't work, or you moved on from that partnership, are you in particular looking for that type of male again, another stone butch?
Yes, my preference is to partner with a stone butch or a stone masculine of center, person,
Okay.
or an FTM that identifies as stone. It has to
Gotcha.
be stone, definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
And so, how did you meet Soul?
Oh gosh, well, like everybody else on Facebook, honey.
I met mine on Grindr. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm not on Grindr, so we were in a group together, an LGBT group, and he happened to be, they asked, where are you from? And everybody's, from here, there, and everywhere, and he's from San Antonio, and I'm like, oh, I'm from San Antonio too, and then we just kind of started talking a little bit, chatting, and eventually, we met up for coffee, and that was it. The rest is history. From that moment, it was just like, it was a done deal, pretty much. Yeah. So, if you can hear the background music, I think they're practicing. I think it's a choir that's practicing downstairs, and
There's a concert on Sunday.
is it okay? So yeah, so they're practicing for that, preparing. So if you're in the area, you want to come down to Woodlawn Point on Sunday and experience that with us. We'd love to have you. Come on down.
So, did you talk about your work, how you started in substance use?
I did not yet anyway. I was what you call a party girl. I was from a very young age. I think I was like 16. I started smoking weed and drinking alcohol, and then eventually, as I grew older, I just made a lot of friends that also used and stuff, and then eventually, I went into the harder stuff. Cocaine. I experienced LSD, PCP, crank, which is now crack?
Meth.
No, meth. Okay, yeah, crank, and I did all of those things, and I didn't realize when I was in it, I didn't realize that I was addicted. I was just kind of just going with it and just doing it, and I woke up one day and I was 60 pounds lighter. And I realized that I had bones where I didn't even know I had bones, and it scared the hell out of me. So I had to stop. And I tried, to like leave all of it, but like many others, you realize you have a problem and you stop, but you can't stay stopped. So I went back to that, the weed and the alcohol, thinking, oh well, I'm gonna only do this. But then there was cocaine involved too. And eventually, that became a problem again. And so this went on, for years until finally I had children, and my oldest daughter was 21, and I realized that she was hooked on cocaine, and that I was the example that she had followed. And I knew that it was time to make a choice, and I needed to help her. And thinking that I could help her, I decided to go into, the groups, the 12-step groups called Celebrate Recovery. And then through that, I realized I can't help her. I can learn, how not to be an enabler anymore, but I need to do this for me, for myself, People will say, oh, well, I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing it for my husband. I'm doing it to not lose my marriage. I'm doing it for any reason. But if you're not really in it and saying, I need this for me, then you're not doing it for the right reasons. You might be able to sober up and gain recovery for a little while, but eventually you're going to go back because you're not really being real. And the most important thing in recovery is to have, this integrity, and that's something that I didn't have in when I was using. I didn't have any of that. I was just a big liar, manipulator, user, and all that. Yes.
So, Sugar, I wanted to ask you a myth that I think, being that we were in the same demographics of Texas at the time, sometimes people. Did you have were you in, when you were in your addiction, were you still in the Texas Valley at the time?
Yes.
So you weren't in San Antonio yet?
No.
So basically the point I guess I want to make is a lot of people, if they hear this, people think like, oh, well, I'm in this little town, we don't have that or whatever. And, once you start an addiction, you start growing and growing and growing, you're going to find it regardless.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's no bars hold,
Yeah.
And then I was, in my case, like your case, we've talked before where, look at me, 19 down the roads, and I'm in another whole country that doesn't give a crap what I'm doing.
Yes. Well, have you ever heard that? There's a saying. It says, "Your vibe attracts your tribe." I was on the bus in San Jose, California. I was on the bus, and I'm riding the bus to work because that's when I was using all that other heavy stuff, and a guy sits behind me. And not knowing me or anything from anybody. And he says to me, hey, you got any papers? And I'm like, you got any weed? And he's like, yeah. And so
what?
it's weed, And I mean, well, what do you need papers for, right? So back in the day, we didn't do blunts back then, Blunts came about the time I got sober. So, and he knew. And I knew. It's that way. Wherever you're at, you're going to find people that do what you do. You're going to gravitate to them, or they're going to gravitate to you. And so,
I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, Sugar, I didn't mean to
go
interrupt
ahead.
you. It's kind of like the example I always use. You're at Walmart at 3:30 in the morning roaming around, and you see two other people roaming around looking like zombies. Yeah, you're both doing the same thing. What I call meth shopping.
Right. Sure, absolutely. And it's anywhere and everywhere. Drugs don't respect people. They don't respect anything at all. Little towns, big cities, it doesn't matter. The drugs are there. If you're not using the drugs that I'm using, there could be addiction has a behavioral issue. It's not really just drugs and alcohol. It could be people. It could be food. It could be work. It could be anything. Codependency is one of those where you're addicted to people, and that's a big problem because sometimes they don't address that first or during the recovery, and it's really important that we start to identify our behaviors, not just the drugs, and stop the drugs, or the alcohol.
Right.
I do have a question. You talked a little bit about codependency.
Yes.
Now, is that normally brought on by substance use? Or?
No.
Hold on. And if you guys hear any crunching, that's because we're fat and we're eating snacks. So please don't mind us.
We got cookies and stuff. No. Okay. So codependency happens when you stop it. Okay. Santiago's messing with me. Okay, so codependency is brought on by the dysfunction in the family. It comes from your family of origin, the issues that are happening in your family, the examples that you've been shown and stuff. For instance, when I said my daughter was using, so that's a way of codependent behavior. She got it from me. That's predisposition anyway. That's genetic predisposition as well, but the behaviors, she saw that, she mimicked that, and she continued that, and I needed to change. Codependency can come from trauma, from brokenness, especially from family dynamics, like divorce or anything like that, or from the dysfunction in the family. Dad is using and mom is just putting up with all his bullshit, and stuff, and all of a sudden, child thinks that they're responsible and they're not, and then they learn to address things just like mama did. Yes, sir.
I wanted to say, Sugar, what you're adding to what you're saying, especially the family being an example, and I know for myself it took years and years and years as I got older to figure out to me, it was normal. You got in a fight with someone, and boom, you punched them in the
Right,
face. And
yep.
then one person finally said, how do you think I would love you if you're beating the tar out of me? And then it just kind of, and I was in with a counselor at the time, and I was like, and I realized it was this learned behavior
Yes.
that I was just okay with. And it took another, I was 38, maybe 40 years old, 10 years ago maybe, before I had gotten to the point where I wasn't physically abusive or emotionally abusive even, because to me that was just a normal thing. That's how I was, you know?
Yes, and those are things that we learn and we pick up as we go along. Sometimes we pick them up at home, and sometimes we pick them up in our relationships up to this point where you realize, hey, I have a problem and I need help. The great thing is that you can say, I need help. That's the hardest and the easiest thing to do, both, you know. But yeah, it's a work in
I
progress.
do have a quick question for you. You had mentioned, just going back just a little bit, you mentioned that you kind of got into what you're doing because of your daughter. Because she started doing, was it cocaine? Is that what
Yes.
you said? And that she had learned how to do it basically from watching
Yeah.
you. Where do you think you got your addiction from?
My father.
Your father?
Absolutely. Yeah, 50% of addiction, it comes from genetics. It really does. There's statistics to prove it. If you have a problem with and it doesn't have to be the same drug of choice. Your dad could be an alcoholic and you decide, you want to pick up marijuana or crack or whatever, but it's the addiction, the predisposition is in the DNA already. So you have these cells in there that are predisposed to perhaps, blowing up at some point when you use this and taking you on a journey that you didn't really even think you were going to go on, but it happens.
So what would be, as a counselor, what would be the explanation for, because I've worked with a lot of those type of clients, the ones who are addicted, whether it be heroin or whatever, mostly that, but where the one client would say, no, no one in the family, well, the client would say, no one in the family is like this except me. What's the explanation for that? Because that must not be genetic. So what
Right.
is the explanation for that person? I'm
Okay.
just curious. I'm
Again,
not making a judgment call.
Sure,
I'm just curious.
Sure. Okay. So 50% is genetic predisposition. The other 50% picked it up somewhere. They may not have that in their family of origin. So, it doesn't mean that they can't be addicted to something.
Right.
It's, they can, if they have codependency issues. And this is how they cope. They pick up alcohol to cope, or to feel better. And then all of a sudden, one day they realize, oh shit, excuse my French, I have,
Yes.
You speak French?
yes, I do.
And here you can.
Okay,
This
thank you.
podcast.
Yes.
We're
Just a
unfiltered.
little bit.
We're
of French.
unfiltered, so you
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, yeah. So eventually it gets to be the crutch. It's not just for fun anymore. It's for functioning, and then if you're not able to function, well, then that's when you realize that you did get to this point where you need help.
And also, parents sometimes are pretty good at hiding
Yes.
that they're using.
Yes, I was going to say there's a a genogram. I don't know, like the family tree when they do the ancestry and all that. Well, we do what's called a genogram. And what we do is we identify, we put, 3 generations. And like if you have kids, then that's your 3rd generation. If you don't, then you're the last generation. So you go back to your parents and your grandparents. That's 3. Grandparents, parents, and you. And so you identify not just the parents and grandparents, but the siblings, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. And in those families, you take a look at mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, and how many siblings your parents have. And do they have people in addiction in their families? Do they have... Here's the thing is, not only do we have predisposition for, the genetics, but we also have trauma, okay? And we also have abuse. And so from that, that's kind of like the major sources of, where we go to for help. We use the drugs and alcohol for coping because we don't have anything else, or we've not been taught anything else. Think of our culture. I'm a Hispanic woman, and we have alcohol at almost every single event. When somebody is born, we celebrate. When somebody has a birthday, we celebrate with what? Alcohol. When somebody dies, what do?
We drink.
We drink.
Baptisms.
When we have barbecues, when we
drink.
have baptisms, it's always prevalent. It doesn't mean that you're going to be an alcoholic. It just means you have a tendency to have this around, and so we are taught by this acceptance of it that it's okay to drink. Not understanding that, hey, you know what, Dad has the alcoholism bug already. I might have it, you know. And then if you're celebrating Mija, well, Mija might even get it, you know, because that's how that goes, you know.
I'm gonna go with that as an excuse, because when you go to black barbecues or weddings or anything, everybody's drinking. When you go to a white wedding, you're still seeing people drinking. When you go to Asian, and I used to go to temple or Asian parties because my best friend was Lao. That's all they did.
Okay.
And they would bring out the Henny. They're not talking,
Right.
not bringing out the little cheap bottles.
Yes.
I'll even show you a picture a few minutes ago. You're gonna laugh because there was just so much stuff. So you can't just say only Hispanics do this and that and the third.
No.
It's any culture that brings it, but
Okay.
it's how they moderate it.
I can only speak for mine because I don't want to get into generalizations or stereotypical, you know, things that might, I don't know, whatever.
Offend.
All I'm saying is that I know in my culture, this is what happens, you know. Now, yes, I've seen other cultures, you know, drink and have functions and stuff like that, but we're talking about this one in particular. I'm talking about this one in particular, which is the Hispanic culture, the one that I belong to. Otherwise, everything is, everything, you know, it's just a matter of how you see it or what culture you belong to, and if you can identify those things as well. I'm not saying don't ever drink again or don't go to a party that has alcohol. I'm saying we are teaching our generations the same things that we've been taught. Is it okay? Is it gonna blow up at some point? Just pay attention to your babies, that's all.
But it's the parents also, because parents think it's
Oh,
okay.
yes.
I mean, you'll see the grandfather and the father smoking weed with the son. Oh, it's okay. You know, he's with me. No, it's not okay. You shouldn't be doing drugs, period.
Absolutely.
You know, this is where you're teaching, so don't get mad when he gets busted later on or he follows your path and ends up
Right.
in prison.
So would you say that they are thinking logically when they're under the influence? Are they making the right choices to teach their children when they're using too? I don't think they're aware.
No, they're not aware,
Right.
but
So this is the example that our children follow.
Right.
And so that's what we're doing to them. So we need to modify ourselves too. If we want our children to do better, we have to do better. And that's what happened with my daughter and I. I smoked weed with my kid. I was ashamed of it after, and I'm still ashamed of it now. But at the time, I was a full-blown addict. And when I saw her, you know, my mindset was so convoluted. Like I was, you know, it was like, hey, this is a bonding experience. You know, we get high, we laugh and stuff. But at the same time, this is my child, you know, and I need to not do this with her. And so finally, you know, I was able to make the decision to not just stop, but to stop completely because I wanted to help her. In the process, you know, I was taught, you know, a lot of things for myself because I needed to do this for me. Because as the head of the household, I needed to take responsibility for the things that I was showing my children, you know, how I was operating and stuff. And that, like I said, this is a program of rigorous honesty, nothing but integrity. So when you're doing this sobriety recovery thing, you know, the only one who's going to know if you're fucking up or not, excuse my French again, is you, is me, you know, and I have to be that person to hold myself accountable because in the long run, guess what? I'm looking at grandchildren now. My kids have already overcome addiction, you know, thank you God, but I have grandkids now and I need to pay attention because some of the things that we need to look for are learning disabilities, behavioral issues, you know, different things like that that show up and we're not even aware of those, and our kids are growing up. And guess what? We're putting them on medication, Ritalin, Adderall, all that stuff
I've
to
never
calm
seen
them
all
down.
that craziness before. It's impossible.
Let me tell you, 10 years ago, the doctors, they used to get $1,000 a kid to put them on Ritalin or Adderall.
Oh my God.
I have no idea how much it is now, but Big Pharma got big money.
Oh, I was on Ativan
So,
for a long time.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
But did it help?
Well,
That's the,
Oh
that's
yeah,
the thing. Did it
I was a
help?
hyperactive child with ADHD, but yeah, I didn't climb the walls.
okay. And see, nowadays,
Extremes.
now that we have more information, we have the interwebs and stuff, we can look up things like, for instance, I have ADHD, and I take a supplement for that instead of medication. As I get older, I have, other issues, and so I don't want to take a lot of medicine, but I know that I have these things going on. So I have to find ways to deal with them that are natural and holistic and that will work for me, so that I don't have to take medication and medication, more medication, because I have that genetic predisposition. I already have that addiction bug in there. And so we have these little guys, little boys, little girls that are hyperactive. Today, you don't see kids outside playing anymore. We don't send them out to do anything physical or anything like that. So they are not getting their little wiggles out or whatever, no pun intended, Mr. Wiggles. But they're not active anymore. And so we are doing this to them. And I get it, you can't trust everybody, anymore. So, you can't leave your kids outside. But guess what, parents? You got to get out there and with them. Because they have to see you. Because what? We are the example that they follow. So we need to teach them to be more active and stuff and get those wiggles out, because otherwise they're just going to want to treat them with a pill. And what's that pill going to do? Ritalin, Adderall, Vyvanse, you know what they have? Amphetamines. That's what those are. So if that little baby has a genetic predisposition, guess what? You, parent, are contributing to their possible
Funny you say that, because I
Addiction.
just in the last year had started talking about the fact that I was on Ativan and what it would do to my mood swings, which then after I was, as an adult, was doing other drugs. And I was started really addicted to methamphetamine, and once I started getting back in and getting everything tweaked the way it should, I still was bipolar, swinging left to right, left to right. And without even telling the doctor, he did blood work, and came back and says, so I was able to get stuff for Corpus Christi sent. And he goes, okay, I see where the Ativan was, and He goes, so what you are basically, why we couldn't understand why you're not fitting into bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 is because we actually have a newly diagnosed category that we call it unspecified. And he goes, it's for people like you that have multiple, like you were saying, the way that you did the family back in, I realize now to looking, depression and stuff goes way back.
Right.
My grandmother found her father dead at 14, and things like that came down. My father was like that and all that. And it's just, it all adds up.
Right.
And then, now when at a time when I don't know if they think that they were helping me, I take it a little more personal. It is like, you're a damn brat. Take this fucking pill so that we can do what we need to be done and drag your ass to church and be, because within that we're talking about drug addictions and things like that, and and I believe that there's all types of addictions. I think religion is an addiction.
It could be
the
very
way that
well.
I grew up. I really feel like that. My family, I was disowned for being gay at 18 and all that, and for them, the way that they deal with that was more church. That was their addiction and their codependency.
But they didn't really have any alternatives, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking, listen, before I'm going to be 58 soon. Okay, so I'm old, and I'm a grandmother now, and I'm very happy to be this in the skin that I'm in. But I can tell you that my parents, my mother had a mental health issue. My father definitely had mental health issues, and my grandparents may have had. But they didn't go for treatment.
No.
People back then didn't.
No.
My parents are 70-something. You think that they would have gone to a doctor and taken some pills for antidepressants? They would have been, get out of here. I'm fine. They didn't even talk about it.
But what if they did?
What if they did what?
What if they had gone to a doctor and got diagnosed that they were antidepressant? It'd be a whole lot easier on the children, because when you see a parent go through all that shit, to depression, drinking every day, or doing drugs, you know, you're worried, and he's like, you're gonna be you're gonna be that person as
Mm-hmm.
well, especially if it is hereditary. You saw your great grandmother the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, there has to be a stop somewhere.
I get it.
I
But
mean-
but what if your parents don't tell you?
Yeah.
How many of
But you
us
see it as a
when
kid.
we yes,
But you don't know
they
what it
tell
is,
you
so.
don't worry about it, they're vitamins. Or don't worry about it, that's none of your business.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us grew up in a household where they said, no, that's not
That's
true.
too
Everything's
bad."
fine. Just go
Yeah.
outside and play, or just it's not your business. I mean, we grew up in that era where adults kept everything close to the chest, close to the vest, right? And so we didn't have a lot of information. Now we do. But we're adults, What are we showing our children? What are we showing everyone else? And that's why I came into this, and I'm going to just bring it back to this. I am so excited to do what I do. I love what I do. I have a passion for it because I feel like, part of the addiction recovery is education. I don't want to tell you, hey, just don't drink or just don't use. I want to help you so you can understand where this came from, not so you can blame anybody, but so that you can see, hey, I'm going to take responsibility for myself because I'm an adult and I love myself now and I want to be healthy. And that's important. And that's what I want to share and teach, and that's why I do what I do. And that's how I came to LPSA was, when I moved here, I didn't have any friends. And I knew Mark and Gilbert, the founders of Living Positive, at a different church. And then when they moved over here, they invited me over here. And I started coming, and I was probably one of, 2-3 women in the group and 100 men. And but I didn't care, because I felt like I was included in something important. And it is. It's very important for us to have a fellowship, to support each other. That's why we have the group. That's why we have the phone tree. That's why we have, I know,
That was very
my
strong.
bad.
What'd you
I'm
eat?
so sorry.
God.
Cheese crackers with Senor Wiggles. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I'm
Oh
kidding.
God.
No, it was stinky. Okay. God bless America. Okay, people, I'm sorry. I'm dealing with indigestion right now, and Santiago just called me out on it. But anyway, okay.
Well, I do have a couple. So,
Go ahead.
are you a licensed substance use counselor, or are you just like a licensed therapist?
No, I am a licensed chemical dependency counselor intern. I am technically still an intern because I haven't completed my degree. I completed my state exam and all the different things that the state wants you to complete, but they didn't honor the degree that I brought from Illinois to Texas. So I have to not start, but I'm trying to complete my bachelor's degree, and then I'll be completely 100% a licensed chemical dependency counselor with no I at the end of it. So,
But that's good
yeah.
that you made the change. You knew what
Yes.
to do, when to stop, so you could grow with your family and be in a more of a positive life.
Well, I always wanted to, and I didn't want to use. There was a time, it came to a point where I just didn't want to get high anymore. And I did it anyway because that was the thing that we did. When I got with my friends, they were all like, okay, spark it up, and I mean, we'd go out to eat or whatever, and we were smoking before we got to the restaurant. Anywhere we went, it was always drinking and smoking. And so it was always, that was the norm. It was like smoking cigarettes. And so I just didn't want to
What
do it
age did
anymore.
you start?
I was 16.
16?
Yeah.
Did you
And
say
I did it-
start or snort?
Start. Start.
I was 16 and I quit, and I got into recovery at 43.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
At what age did you realize you were queer?
Oh.
Were they similar, close ages, or do you think there
You
might
know,
have been some hand in hand with that?
I was 20 when I came out, actually, and I came out with a stone butch, and then I didn't really think that I was gay. I kind of was like, I've never been gay. I've never been with a woman except her, and I've never really thought about being with a woman or wanting to do things like that. But understanding, myself, I knew that I loved her, and it took me about, years to finally let that go, and she'd moved on and stuff. And I went in different directions in my addiction, and I used men, as an addiction. I had a biker guy, I had a cholo, I had different, trying to find my niche where I fit. And eventually I met another stone butch, and then I found my place, and it felt so perfect. It felt so good to be in that relationship, and I was so happy because I felt like this was what I was supposed to be doing. I never felt that with anyone else.
I've never heard that phrase before.
What's
Stone,
that? Oh.
Stone fam or stone butch.
Yeah, I've never heard that either. That's why I asked.
Yeah, it's a subgroup.
We're used to hearing like lipstick lesbian or butch dyke. So for you to give us 2 new words added to the alphabet of letters, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I want to ask, what do you think, Sugar? Something that I went through in recovery, well, not in recovery, when I first started, after I had come out of, a program, how important, I know the answer, but I'm asking you to let others know, because then it won't be coming from just me, how important you think it is to completely surround yourself with a whole different group of people to find happiness. It takes a while, right, to find the sober friendships and friendships that you're so used to, scoring together and everything together.
Yes.
Revolved around that drug.
Right.
And, it takes a hard time. I guess what I want people to know and hear is, I've heard people say, oh, I've gone to AA, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-time thing.
Correct.
It's not a one-time thing. I think it took me, with this last counselor that I've been with, who is amazing, it took me about 1.5 years in to really start realizing, what she's saying was right to me, and changes were actually happening.
Good.
The day that I, I'm always in addiction, complaining and crying about, because Joey's mom did this, she did that. And I'll never forget when Stacy said, let me ask you something. If you were not an addict and had never done that drug, would that have happened? Well, no, but, so what I'm asking you, Wayne, if you had not done drugs, would that have happened? It's like, my mind, I was like, you fucking bitch. I walked out of that office stomping off that day. And when I came back the next time on Friday, that I was like, you know what, you said something to me that really, and then that was a time for me to start growing, really start growing there. I think when you finally accept what it is, what you've done, where you want to go.
Well, we have these aha moments, right? We have these epiphanies, throughout our lives, and especially when you're growing. It's how you grow, when you're finally able to accept, when the light goes off in your head and you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. Why didn't I think of this sooner? Perhaps your point of reference wasn't there yet, but somewhere along the way, you were able to make that connection, and that was exactly what you needed, right then. And so, and it hit you. Sometimes our words have impact. Sometimes they don't have it right away. Sometimes they just kind of sit on your spirit for a minute, and then and then you're like, wait, what? And you're accepting of that.
So then, what is your stance on doing drugs, like smoking weed recreationally or drinking socially? Because I know, like, some people, they preach like, oh, you can't do it, period, or whatever.
Okay, so if you have problems with addiction, I would say please abstain. And get yourself to a meeting, find somebody to talk to, that sort of thing. But if you're not an alcoholic, if you're not an addict, and a lot of people are not, I don't care what you do. That's up to you. I mean, I do care about everyone and their health and well-being. But, some people can use marijuana recreationally or for medicinal purposes, and that's fine. CBD oil, and stuff. But that has minimal THC in it as well. But, it's all in the individual and where they're at, in their own lifestyle and their own walk, This is your journey. I don't have anything to do with your journey. If you want help, you call me. I'm there for you. But I can't tell you, don't do it. Because
there's some people that are very lucky that can do it. And I consider myself that way. Santiago and I, last year, pandemic going on, joined at the hip, drinking margaritas from every place that did them to go in town.
Yep.
And
But we only did it on a certain day. It ain't like we
Yeah.
did it every day.
but
Okay,
we did it Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, something like that.
Motherfucker.
And for me, knowing that
The
I'm
truth
an
comes out.
addict, I always make the joke. I said, you can put me in a room with all the liquor in the world, and if you tell me not to touch it, I'm not going to touch your liquor. You
Right.
put me in a room with $1 million, don't take my money. I won't touch it. If you put me in a room where there's methamphetamine, don't touch it. I can promise you, I'm going to steal just enough
Yeah.
that I can get to get high, and I think that you won't notice it's gone.
Right. Yeah, because that's still part of our that's part of our addiction behavior.
Yeah.
It's the lying. We're not yet holding ourselves accountable, and saying, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this, and I'm not going to do this.
So I've always had this thought, and for like when it comes to AA or NA or whatever, because most of the time when you go to AA or NA, they tell you to abstain from doing whatever addiction brought you in there. In my mind, I've always thought, well, why can't they teach them how to, maybe like if they enjoy doing it, maybe teach them how to do it to the point where it can't go out of hand.
Well, let me ask you something. Can you, like, if you love red velvet cake and you have a red velvet cake in your house and you have a little bit and it's so good, and the next day you come back, you have a little bit more, and that afternoon you're like, that's good too. I'm going to have a little bit more. It's not a big deal, right? Okay, you're not in control. At some point you're just like going for it. Just going for it. And that's the problem with people with in addiction. We don't have the wherewithal to say that's enough. If there's a ton, we're gonna want to do more. If there's whatever the drug is or whatever, we're gonna want to do more. How many times have you been in a relationship and know that it's a bad relationship and still go back for more because you love them or because they need you or because whatever? I don't know if that makes sense.
I want to add to
Go ahead.
that the psychiatrist actually told me we had this conversation that Leo was talking about, and I was questioning, well, why? And the psychiatrist says your brain, the way that it is wired and fires right now as an addict, methamphetamine was your big hang up. If you were to go back and to try it one time, the body starts off where it stopped.
Yes.
So if you were doing this much a day and it was just that one time,
Yeah.
whatever you did the first 6 years, you're going to start right up at
It's
the
going to
6th
start,
year
your
and go
addiction's going to
forward.
start again. But I will tell you that, like, for instance, people who use drugs, hard drugs like heroin or crack or whatever, they try to go back. They've been sober for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and they go back into it. They think that they can use the same amount as when they stop. They
Yeah.
cannot. Their tolerance has already come way, way down.
When they OD.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is why they OD and and eventually and sometimes die
Yeah, I've heard
because they think, hey, well, I was using a gram a day, so now I can use another. I'm going to start with a gram a day. That's where I'm going to start. That's your jumping off point. That is not acceptable because your body just went through withdrawals and everything else, and now you're clean. And so you start all over, and you're just like asking for trouble.
That
big
happened to a
time.
client of ours, and
I've-
she did die.
I've known many people,
Yeah,
many
she did
people.
die.
What's
Yeah.
your definition of a functional addict?
Me, I was a functional addict. I kept a job, paid my rent, kept my everything going, and pretended that I was fine. And during the day, I had mental health medications for antidepressant. I had Xanax. I had Valiums that I got in Mexico. I would drink in the afternoon. I would smoke all day long throughout, and I would use cocaine at the end of the day so that I could continue to function and party, and then go home and do it again the next day. I'd get up and do it again. But I went to work, and I kept my home, and I had a nanny for my kids. And I was like, you know what I mean? I had a home, and I had a car, and I had insurance, and I'm paying my bills and stuff. And then I would go off on these binges, and I'd get where I would spend all my money, and I didn't have money for rent or whatever, and I'd be in trouble, and I'd be like, oh shoot, now I've got to rein it in, Cindy, or Sugar, you gotta rein it in, and get back to whatever. And I would do that, but I would show up every day for work. I didn't miss work. So I couldn't be an alcoholic. I
Right,
couldn't be
'cause
an
only they
addict.
met-
Right.
they-
I'm not a homeless person. How can I be an addict?
Right.
You know? And
That's
so,
our perception.
right. We think that addicts are the ones that are homeless and
Under
begging
the
and
brick.
stuff. And that's not true. You know? Some addicts hide it very, very well and they
Yeah.
still continue to function.
I was a high functioning addict too.
Right.
When you're functioning like that, all it does is you just find the better stuff.
Correct.
You have
Yeah.
more money,
Yeah.
better quality.
Yeah.
Quickly, because we do perceive people under the bridge as being the addicts. Percentage-wise, are most people high functioning, or are they the people under the bridge?
That's a good question.
I think it's 50-50.
That's a really good question. I can't answer that for
I
you.
think it's 50-50.
But I do see that, you know, the homeless that we experience here in San Antonio, some of them have addiction issues, some of them have mental health issues, some of them have both. Remember, untreated mental health issues, when you reach for something that's going to make you feel good, like alcohol, like a pill, like, you know, drugs, you're going to forget what's going on with you right then, and you're just going to enjoy the high, you know. But once you come down, you either go get high again, or you know, or whatever. But your reality is your reality, regardless of whether you're under the bridge or you're at home, or you know, in a big mansion and at the Dominion or wherever. You know, the truth is that, you know, you could be an addict anywhere.
I've seen examples of when I was really heavy into drugs and I actually went from a job and I was living in a drug house, whatever, and I would see people, like we said, the bridge people, that it's mental health, but what would you do if you're not able to get? We know that psychiatrists you have to wait 6 to 8 months in San Antonio to get into a psychiatrist. So what do? Let's say if you're schizophrenic. Well, we know that methamphetamine will actually help control that mind
Right,
thought, you
right.
know,
But-
because it did for me. But at the same time,
Okay.
I knew
So-
people in the DA buying it.
So here's
Judge.
the thing. I want to share this with you guys in case people out there, if you don't know and you're in the San Antonio area, if you have a person in crisis, a mental health crisis, what you can do is you can call the police, tell them that they are having a mental health issue, breakdown, whatever, and to take them to the crisis center at the Restoration Center over at Haven for Hope. Haven for Hope has a 2-day stabilization unit where you can take the homeless, you can take the mental health, you can take anybody that has a crisis situation. If they are freaking out, if they are schizophrenic, if they are whatever it is, if they're drunk and acting foolish, they can take them to the sobriety unit. They have a sobriety unit, a detox unit, and the crisis unit there at the Restoration. It's at 601 North Frio. And
the
they,
Jimenez building.
yes, and they will take you and put you, you know, in a safe place and help you and stabilize you. Now, that person that you were talking about, that schizophrenic person, they can go there, and they will take care of them for 2 days, stabilize them, give them meds, and then figure out where they go next. Whether they go to the detox unit, or if they want to go to a rehab unit or a mental health facility, you know, a state funded. There is state funds available for these people that are out there and needing help. You know, it just depends on the right connections, right? So, and you know, I see officers stopping homeless people, you know, and stuff. The other night there was a pregnant woman at a bus stop, and she was not wearing any clothes, and the officers were standing there talking to her and stuff. And I wondered, you know, and I should have stopped. I didn't because I had my husband in the car. He needed to go home. But I wanted to know.
For health reasons.
Yeah, for health reasons. Yes, thank you. But I wanted to know, what did they do with her? You know?
Why wasn't there a blanket covering over her? You know,
Yeah.
I know that they have those silver ones in the car.
They had her put her clothes back on. That I saw. She was attempting to put her clothes on. She was very, very pregnant. Beautiful young woman. And I don't know if they were able to take her, but you have to ask for the crisis unit. You cannot just assume that the police are going to come and they're going to take them, because they will take them to jail. You have to let the police know with no uncertain terms that they have mental health issues and they need help, and they need to go to the crisis center at the Haven for Hope. That's the one that I know of that will take you immediately.
Why do you think that SAPD does not know that? Because years back when I got into my program and some stuff started happening, the police were calling me by the place where I live, and I remember telling the police officer, look, and I told him, I'm high on meth. Can you help me? Where can I go? I don't know the area. He goes, I don't know what to tell you. Just like, I don't tell you.
Okay.
You know, that's actually, since you said that, that's part of the defund the police idea is stop sending police to mental health issues and send somebody who is trained in mental health issues.
Well, San Antonio
And I think we
PD
need to
is
do that.
trained in that. The downtown officers, the ones that work out of the main office, they are trained for mental health situations. You know, most of them are or were. I don't know if they're doing that now, but you have to tell them this is a mental health issue and I need to go to the crisis center, and they will take you. Or if you're calling for a loved one, tell them the same thing. They need to go to the crisis center. Can you take them? They'll let you know, if there's room available, because sometimes they're full.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
A lot of times they're full.
But they have the men separate from the women. I don't know what the capacity is, but and if that's not available, I have to believe that there are more places that can do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I did have a situation at work once where I did have to call, and I asked specifically for the mental health crisis unit, and they told me, well, they're out on another
remember
call. Yeah, and it's going to be 2.5 hours. Like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
This does not
No.
take 2.5
Right.
hours, because in 2.5 hours, a whole lot of stuff could happen.
Oh, for sure.
And so what ended up happening is the gentleman left anyway, but that's where he went and what or how he conducted himself
Right.
after that. Who really knows?
Right.
There was another instance where we did call SAPD for a gentleman in our clinic who was threatening to harm others or himself.
I remember that as well.
And that got taken care of. Very I'd like, on behalf of SAPD, I would just like to say and by SAPD we mean San Antonio Police Department, they were very compassionate with that gentleman. Very compassionate. And so, you run the gamut of types of people and who responds and who doesn't. I don't want to generalize about all the policemen, because I've seen some very good
Yes.
actions take place.
Yes.
We also had another one at the downtown office, who said, I'm going to go shoot up all the white people at Haven for Hope right now. I'm leaving. And he says, and y'all can't do nothing to stop me. And,
That's a terroristic threat.
well, and he made it. And so we called, SAPD was called right away.
Yeah.
And they did come out pretty quickly.
Good.
And, scoured the neighborhood looking for him. Didn't find him. But I said, well, if you want to know where he's headed, this is where he's headed, at the very
Good.
least. And he says, well, we'll do our best. They started with the initial neighborhood, but, I want to say that on their behalf also, and that they do try,
Yes.
and there is a specific group trained just in mental
Right.
health.
Yes.
It's not regular SAPD at all.
Right. Well, what I want to say is that even if the mental health professionals are not available from SAPD,
EMS.
we can also call EMS. But honestly, if you call the police department and they say we don't have a mental health specialist right now to send out, then send me some officers and let's get this gentleman over to where he needs to go, which is the crisis center, and ensure that you get the officers' names or whatever, the badge numbers, and that they call you once he's at the crisis
Right.
center. That they actually did that for him, because really at that point they're basically just monitoring him and transporting him,
Right.
To safety, to somewhere where he can get help.
I know somebody that's a peer recovery coach, but is also an addict.
Okay.
So it's like, I don't feel he should be a peer recovery because it's you're telling.
It's counterproductive.
Right.
Yeah, it's counterproductive,
Oh,
and you're being a
absolutely.
hypocrite. And you're walking around saying this, that, and the third, but yet we already know you've been doing this. We've seen you high. We've seen you
Yes.
do all this stuff.
Is he still doing it?
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, that
no,
needs
no.
to stop.
You're right, but
And
do we? I mean, I don't want to say I'm going to go report him to his boss, but at the same time, it's like you're going to hurt somebody.
Yes.
You know,
Well, how
especially if
can
you
you-
end up. going out with them too, and then
Oh.
partying with them too.
Well, that's
Yes.
a whole different story because
Oh,
that's,
yeah, that's not acceptable.
crossing boundaries
That is,
anyway.
yeah, that's
That's something like-
remember that this is a program of rigorous honesty. Okay,
Right.
so in your recovery, you want to hold yourself accountable, and if that person is not holding themselves accountable and is using or and partying with his clients,
Right.
or the people that he helps, that's really not acceptable.
That's a conflict of interest.
Yes, big time.
Big time.
Big time. Yeah, because you know what? These people that have needs, they trust us. You know,
Right. I mean, we're putting our life in your hand. I mean,
Correct.
I'm not an addict, but if I'm going to you for help, let's say you,
Yes.
and you're still doing this party, and then I see you, let's say at a bar, and you're doing all this stuff that
Right.
you're telling me not to do,
Yes.
you're a freaking hypocrite.
Right,
You know, you should not even have that job.
right. See, if I go to a club, which is very rare, I'm going with a specific purpose. It's somebody's birthday, or I feel like dancing, which doesn't really happen very often anymore at 58. But
But it should.
yeah, well, I know, but I do it in my kitchen anyways. But,
Right, but
okay.
but even if you
but
do, that's
I don't
fine.
drink, I don't use,
Right.
and I'm standing there. I have a Coke in my hand. If I'm drinking anything, it's a Coca-Cola with cherries in it. Just remember, in case you want to send me a drink with,
With
cherries.
cherries in it.
Just
Yeah,
in case
those
when we
cherries.
see her at the bar, we can buy her a drink.
Yeah.
But okay, but there is an integrity to all
Right.
of this. This particular profession, and like any profession, has some rules and regulations that you have to abide by. And one of them is if I'm going out there and using again, and I'm smoking pot, and I'm doing cocaine, little bumpy poo here and there. I'm not who I say I am.
Right.
Exactly.
And I need to be held accountable. Somebody needs to say, "Cindy, Sugar, you have a problem. What are you doing?" And then
And
see
we're
what happens.
But we're also assuming that this person hasn't been told. How do you know they haven't been told and they're just choosing not to listen because
Yeah.
I have it under control.
Yeah,
You
no,
know, that type thing. And one of the biggest compliments, and I this is how I feel about it, and some other people may have been offended by this comment or whatever, but one of the best and biggest compliments I've ever received in my entire life was from people who I was working with in that methadone program, who said that they loved talking to me because they said, "You get it." And I kept saying, "What I get what?" What being an addict is like. You were one of us once. And I said, "Oh no, honey, I've never done heroin. I've never done any of those drugs."
Exactly.
And they said, "So how do you know how to talk and deal with us?" And I said, I didn't know that, I was doing that. I never know how much impact I have unless you tell me, or I hope I'm doing the right thing.
You just treated them like humans.
Yeah, I treated them like
Yeah.
humans, and I said, my addiction is to peanut M&Ms. That's my addiction. And I said, but you get me. You
Penis
get me.
and M&Ms?
Peanuts and peanut
Oh, okay.
M&Ms with peanuts.
M&Ms. Yes.
Ah,
And I said-
is that what we call it now?
Yes.
Okay.
And I said, thank you so much. I said, that
I
almost
did
feels
it
like
again. I'm sorry.
I said, that almost feels like an honor,
Anybody have any
The
Tums?
mouthwash.
And
Is that the mouthwash that's in here?
and I
Wiggles is gonna
and I
start
said, and I really appreciate that, and that is a compliment when you can get to a level of understanding. And I don't think, I don't think that you have to necessarily be have gone through the experience
True.
to help someone.
Very true.
Although I feel like recovery coaches, peer support recovery.
Well, they're
coaches
supposed to be in
are-
recovery.
Yeah, are
Right.
the best, but I
And that's
don't-
why they have that title.
Right, but I don't think it always means that you've had to have lived the experience to have done, have reached out to
Absolutely.
people and
Absolutely.
stuff like that. So
I use the example of, I'm sorry, I don't mean
No,
to
no,
interrupt
it's
you,
okay.
but I use the example of cardiologists.
Mm-hmm.
They go to school, they know what they're doing, they study the heart and all that. Do they have to have a heart attack in order to treat you for a heart attack?
absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Right.
That's right. So that's the same thing with, counseling and, that sort of thing. I mean, addicts will say, well, I don't want to deal with her. Or, she doesn't understand or he doesn't understand because he's never been an addict. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? They have the education and the techniques necessary to work with you on that.
I've actually heard that from some of the clients.
That you haven't
Yeah.
been through my lived
Right.
experience. You don't get it. No, honey, I get it because I have my own addictions. They may
Yes.
not be your addictions,
Right.
but they're my addictions.
Yes.
But I do understand what you're saying because when I was with Kobe Ministry, and we'd go to the prisons and go talk to them, someone's like, "Oh, you never been where I've been?" And I'm like, "Well, one, I wasn't stupid enough to get caught,
Okay.
but two, I had that willpower of not to do. It's like I knew what I wanted in my life. I want to go here and not go here. You know, we all have a decision when we wake up in the morning to what to do with our life.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so I hate when people will try to use, well, my parents did this or this and that. It's like, stop using scapegoats
Yes.
and grow the fuck up.
Yes.
Exactly. Like my
No.
parents. Oh, go ahead, Chase.
I was going to say, you're talking about willpower, whether you want to call it willpower or something else. I grew up watching all of my alcoholic grandfathers, all of my alcoholic brothers, a couple of my aunts. I saw them as alcoholics, and I saw what it did to their lives and how it affected their personality. And I knew I didn't want that for myself.
Good.
So I chose to take a different path.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that
Yes.
was the same with me. My parents each could down a 16-pack within like hours.
Yeah.
And you know,
Minutes.
yeah, and they would just get stupid drunk. My mom would piss in herself and throw up on herself, and it just made me disgusted of her and the way she was behaving, and it made me not want to drink. But then, you know, of course, I did start drinking in college, but I learned how to do it correctly and not.
Right.
Because you can get stupid drunk every now and then. I've gotten
You
pretty
can.
Oh,
plenty
yeah.
stupid drunk plenty of times. But
Sure.
I've also gone to the bar and said, I don't know, I
Yes.
want to drink tonight.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's the difference. Like they'll say, how do you know that you have a problem? Well, if the bar closes and you're still looking for more to drink, if you run out of drugs, and everybody else is going to bed and you're still out there trying to score another 20, you probably have a problem.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But also when you spend your whole rent money,
Okay.
and it's like,
That's-
and now you're homeless
yes.
because you were at the bar the whole time, that falls on you.
Absolutely.
And not only that, whatchamacallit, just drinking all the time. I mean, both of my parents were alcoholics. I think first it was my dad, then he got in an accident and stopped drinking. Then my mom became an alcoholic. But it was also because of depression. And I've said this before, so I understand what happened with depression because she was depressed. My great-grandmother was depressed. So it runs in family.
Yes.
And I've seen some of my other siblings.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
ones I claim that are depressed also. But and some of y'all been in my apartment, I have loads of bottles.
yeah.
I might drink every once in a while. Unless it's something like I went on a 20-day adventure and bought all this beer from Chicago to New York to California and everything and have it at the house. But it's still there. Even like I was trying to get him to drink because I wanted everybody to drink this fucking beer because I didn't want to get it stale or something like that. And this fucker didn't want to drink. I'm like, motherfucker, I even bought him wine and this one too. And this one doesn't drink. Now he's married.
It was the day before I started my new job. So,
Oh, yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you can drink then.
yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's all up to your willpower. I do understand it's like, addictions, like, I love to eat. So that's my problem right now, is me eating
Mine
That's
too.
my addiction.
Mine
Food.
too.
food. And, but also, I can go back to the gym or start watching my calories.
Right.
Fuck that. But I'd rather go to the gym and do it there. But because I have two-tone rotator cuffs, I really can't. So I'm going to have to wait till whenever.
Right.
But we all have the addiction of something. We
Yes.
just need to know when to stop.
Yeah.
Or have a friend.
Right.
And how about you fuck yourself?
Okay.
So I think we're gonna go ahead and cut it there. Thank you guys for this interesting topic. I know we got pretty deep into our backgrounds, our lives, our parents. So we hope you enjoyed the podcast. We will be back next week talking about weird health practices that we do or that we've heard people do. So that'll be getting pretty down and dirty. So you don't want to miss that. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.